She was just a schoolteacher arranging flowers. He was a billionaire, lost in grief. But when his 5-year-old daughter pointed and said, "Daddy, I want this mummy," everything changed. What followed wasn't just love, it was a miracle written by a child's heart. "Daddy, I want this mummy." Those words, spoken by a child's innocent voice, tore through the luxury and hush of the Golden Crescent Mall like a thunderclap in a cathedral. The lounge was a spectacle of modern elegance. Polished marble floors reflected golden chandeliers. Delicate music played softly in the background, and the scent of designer perfume lingered in the air. Wealthy shoppers moved slowly, browsing glass cases that held watches more expensive than cars. Everything about the place was quiet, refined, until that moment. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Security guards paused with earpieces pressed tight, and personal assistants stood frozen with coffee cups suspended in hand. Even the digital fountain display, cycling between calming waves and floral animations, seemed to pause. A billionaire, Sheikh Rayhan, stood motionless, caught mid-conversation with one of his advisors. At 42, he was one of the Gulf's most powerful businessmen. He owned oil rigs, tech companies, real estate from Dubai to New York, and yet in this moment, he was just a father. And he was completely stunned. The words hadn't struck the crowd because they were loud. It was what they meant, and who had said them. At the center of the marble-floored lounge, in a red velvet stroller trimmed in gold thread, sat a delicate little girl, Alina. 5 years old, with curious eyes and a face like a painting. Wrapped in a lace dress, her small frame was nestled beneath a cashmere shawl, yet her spirit was anything but delicate. Alina was the light of Rayhan's life, and the reason his heart had not fully turned to stone after the tragedy that changed everything. Her mother, his wife, Samira, had died giving birth to her. Since then, the billionaire had immersed himself in building an empire, hiding grief under contracts and investments. His boardrooms were full, his heart empty. Only Alina kept him human. He gave her the best of everything. Elite tutors, nannies with credentials from Europe, private doctors, toy rooms that looked like amusement parks. But some things money simply couldn't buy. She had never once said the word "mummy" aloud in public. Until now. And who was she pointing at? Across the lounge, near the modest floral kiosk tucked between a luxury watch boutique and a bespoke shoe store, stood a woman. She was dressed plainly, no designer logos, no diamonds. A soft lilac scarf was loosely wrapped around her neck. Her name was Noor. She stood quietly, adjusting the bouquet of white roses in her arms, unaware that a child's voice had just redefined her future. Noor was not a celebrity. Not a model. Not even a customer. She worked there. Part-time florist. Full-time schoolteacher. She was the kind of person most billionaires never noticed. But Alina had. The little girl's gaze had locked onto Noor the moment they passed her booth. For several long seconds, she watched her from the stroller. How gently she handled the flowers, how warmly she smiled at a woman buying peonies. There was something calming about her. Something warm. Something motherly. It wasn't the clothes. It wasn't the job. It was something only a child's heart could recognize. And then she said it, clear as crystal. "Daddy, I want this mummy." Rayhan walked over slowly, unsure if he had heard correctly. He knelt down beside Alina and asked softly, "What did you say, sweetheart?" Alina pointed again at Noor, who was now glancing over, sensing something unusual. "That lady. I want her to be my mummy." A few people had started recording on their phones by now. Not out of malice, just instinct. This was no ordinary moment. A billionaire. A florist. A child. And a sentence that had stopped the world. Rayhan looked up at Noor. She seemed kind. Her eyes met his, full of confusion, but not fear. She had no idea who he was. He stood up, walked toward her, and extended his hand. I believe my daughter thinks very highly of you. Noor laughed nervously. I'm not sure what's happening. Is everything all right? Alina answered for them both. You're the mummy I've been waiting for. The moment was surreal. Noor blushed, still unsure if this was some kind of prank or misunderstanding. Rayhan, who had faced oil sheiks, world leaders, and billion-dollar lawsuits, suddenly didn't know what to say. All he knew was that something had just shifted. A line had been spoken. A heart had spoken. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Sheikh Rayhan built his empire from the sands of ambition. Born into a modest family in the outskirts of Riyadh, he had risen through sheer grit and an unrelenting will to succeed. What began as a small logistics company in his 20s soon evolved into a multinational powerhouse. Oil refineries, cutting-edge tech startups, global real estate. His name came to command respect in boardrooms from Dubai to London, from Singapore to New York. He was invited to summits, awarded medals, and listed among the world's most influential men. To the world, Sheikh Rayhan was a symbol of unstoppable drive and measured brilliance. But within the golden walls of his penthouse overlooking the Arabian Sea, there was an echo that no amount of wealth could silence. His home was quiet, too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the hollow, aching kind that seeps into your bones at night when all the meetings are over, the lights are dimmed, and you're left with only memory. Rayhan had once known love, not just romantic love, but a kind of rare, anchoring partnership. His wife, Samira, had been the only person who truly saw beyond his titles and balance sheets. She was warm and grounded, a schoolteacher by training and a poet at heart. She reminded him to eat, laughed at his stress, and taught him the value of pausing to breathe. They were planning to raise their daughter in a simple home, away from extravagance, until fate intervened. Samira died during childbirth. The hospital, the frantic hours, the silence when they handed him a baby wrapped in soft pink linen but no explanation that could ever suffice, it all remained burned into his memory. That day, Rayhan didn't just lose his wife. He lost his compass. His anchor. The one person who made the world feel whole. He named the baby girl Alina, meaning light, a name Samira had chosen months before her passing. From that day on, Rayhan poured himself into his work, not out of greed, but escape. He couldn't bear to be in the nursery without breaking down. He didn't attend the baby's first bath or feed her with his own hands. Those tasks were given to professionals, trained nannies, nutritionists, pediatric experts. The best money could buy. The mansion was always staffed. A fleet of caretakers rotated shifts, ensuring Alina never lacked anything. Anything but a mother. Rayhan told himself this was what a responsible father did. Build a future. Secure a legacy. Keep the lights on. But the truth? He was running. Every board meeting was a shield. Every new acquisition, a distraction. He rarely let anyone inside the fortress of his grief, and slowly, he became a shadow of the man Samira once knew. Except when he looked at Alina. She had her mother's smile. Her dimples. The same warm eyes that crinkled with joy. And every now and then, Alina would say something that cut through all his defenses. One winter morning, as rain lightly tapped the windows of their glass-encased villa, Alina was seated on the plush window bench. She was watching two children playing tag in the rain with a woman, presumably their mother, who spun in circles with them, laughing despite being drenched. Rayhan stood behind her, sipping his black tea in silence. Then came the question. A whisper, so soft, but so heavy it made his hands tremble. Baba. Why don't I have a mummy like other kids? He couldn't breathe for a moment. Alina turned around, her little face curious but not yet sad. She wasn't accusing. She she was simply noticing. Rayhan knelt beside her and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her head, but no words came. What could he say? That life was unfair? That love, once lost, never truly comes back? That he hadn't even allowed himself to grieve properly, let alone consider letting someone else in? All he could do was hold her tighter. As the months passed, the question stayed with him. He noticed the subtle things Alina began to do, drawing pictures of a woman beside her, adding "mummy" next to her name in her drawings, pretending that her nanny was her mother when asked at birthday parties. The longing in her was growing louder. Rayhan had built everything, towers, companies, legacies. But he hadn't built a home. Not truly. For all his success, he had not yet fulfilled his daughter's most human need, a mother's love. And for all his riches, he couldn't manufacture that love with contracts or credit cards. That seed of guilt, and perhaps hope, began to grow. Until one unexpected afternoon at the Golden Crescent Mall, a child's voice echoed the question that had haunted him for years. On a warm Friday afternoon, sunlight streamed in golden sheets through the glass domes of the Golden Crescent Mall, painting streaks across the marble floors. The air was filled with the soothing scent of oud and fresh coffee, as luxury-clad shoppers moved between high-end boutiques, their chatter blending into the gentle hum of instrumental music. Among them walked Sheikh Rayhan, not in his usual entourage of assistants and blacked-out SUVs, but quietly, dressed in casual linen and leather loafers, pushing his daughter Alina in a red velvet stroller. It was a rare moment. Rayhan rarely ventured into public spaces without layers of planning. But today, he had wanted something different. Something more human. A walk with his daughter. Just the two of them. Alina had always been curious, an old soul in a tiny frame. As they passed the ornate candle stalls and perfumed stands of the lower atrium, she spotted something that made her eyes widen. She leaned forward, pointing ahead. "Look, Baba." Rayhan was mid-conversation with his head of security, checking discreetly on the team's positions when he noticed Alina slipping forward from the stroller straps. She hopped down, her tiny shoes making soft taps as she wandered toward a small booth in the corner of the luxury strip. The booth was modest compared to the marble grandeur around it. No neon signs. No flashy logos. Just a simple wooden sign that read, "Noor's Florals and Fragrance," and a table adorned with hand-poured candles, wrapped rose bundles, and tiny satchels of dried lavender. The space glowed not because of lighting, but because of the woman arranging them. Her name was Noor. A schoolteacher during the week, Noor worked at the stall on weekends to make ends meet. Her father had passed a few years earlier, and she was helping fund her younger brother's university education. Life had never been easy, but it had taught her grace, patience, and the kind of resilience that doesn't announce itself loudly, but quietly shapes a person into someone gentle and strong. Noor wore a modest cream blouse, her hair loosely pinned, a light floral scarf draped around her shoulders. She didn't wear designer perfume, just the natural scent of petals and sandalwood from her stall. Her presence felt calm, like the pages of an old book. Alina stood still in front of her, captivated. For a full minute, she didn't move, just watched. Noor, unaware she was being observed, continued tying a silk ribbon around a bouquet of white roses, then handed it to an elderly customer with a warm smile. That smile, that gentleness, Alina felt it. She didn't know why. She just knew. It was what she had always imagined a mother might look like. Noor finally noticed the little girl with the oversized eyes staring at her. She bent down slightly and said, with warmth in her voice, "Would you like to smell the rose, Habibti?" Alina stepped closer, breathing in the soft fragrance. It wasn't overpowering like the perfumes in other stores. It was real. Gentle. Like the woman offering it. Then, without warning, hesitation, or doubt, Alina turned around, looked across the marble floor where her father stood, and called out with joyful clarity. "Daddy, I want this mummy." Silence fell over the nearby shoppers. A few heads turned. Some smiled, assuming it was just a child's sweet moment. Rayhan, caught completely off guard, walked briskly over. "What happened, sweetheart?" he asked, kneeling in front of her. Alina pointed toward Noor and said with certainty, "She's perfect. She's the mummy I want." Noor's eyes widened. What?" she whispered, unsure whether she had just misheard the child. Rayhan was speechless. He looked at Noor properly now, for the first time. Not as a customer. Not as a billionaire. But as a man trying to understand what his daughter had just seen in this stranger that moved her to speak those words. And something shifted. He couldn't explain it. A soft stirring in the heart. A sense of recognition, though they had never met. Noor didn't look like Samira, his late wife. But there was a quiet dignity about her. A presence. The same unspoken strength Samira had carried with her everywhere. I'm so sorry," Noor said gently, crouching down to face Alina. "That's very sweet of you, dear. But I'm not." "She's the one, Baba," Alina insisted, her tone full of childhood certainty. "She makes the flowers smile." Rayhan smiled faintly at Noor, then looked back at his daughter. "Let's not scare this kind lady," he said softly, then turned to Noor. "I believe my daughter has quite the imagination, and, perhaps, a remarkable instinct." Noor laughed, a light, graceful laugh that only made Alina beam brighter. In that moment, none of them realized it, but something extraordinary had begun. Not fate. Not magic. Just one little girl's heart recognizing what two broken adults had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Later that very day, long after the crowds had dispersed and Alina had fallen asleep, her small arms wrapped around a teddy bear, Sheikh Rayhan returned alone to the Golden Crescent Mall. He wore no suit, no signature lapel pin that marked his corporate identity. Just a plain shirt, slacks, and a sense of curiosity he hadn't felt in years. He stood silently near the floral booth, watching Noor carefully arrange the last of her roses, her hands moving gently, thoughtfully, almost like she was speaking to the flowers through touch. She hadn't noticed him yet. Moments later, he stepped forward and quietly said, "3 bouquets, please." Noor looked up, blinking in recognition. "You were here earlier, with your daughter." He smiled faintly. "She has a strong will. She also has good taste," Noor replied, handing him a bundle of white roses. Rayhan chuckled, surprised by her ease. Most people fumbled or stiffened when they realized who he was. His face was occasionally seen in business journals and economic summits. But Noor? She didn't even ask his full name. That, he found oddly comforting. She wrapped the second bouquet. "What are these for?" Rayhan hesitated. "Honestly, I don't need them. I just wanted to visit." Noor gave a soft smile, one that didn't push or probe. "Well, the flowers will find someone who does." And that was it. No flirtation. No flattery. Just a calm, sincere interaction. He left with arms full of roses, and a heart that felt unexpectedly lighter. He returned again. And again. In the weeks that followed, Rayhan began visiting every Saturday. He would stop by the stall under the pretext of buying something new, lavender sachets, eucalyptus stems, jasmine oil. But in truth, he was drawn by her energy, by the stillness Noor carried in a world that moved too fast. They began talking, about books, family, life. She told him stories from her classroom, about how first graders asked impossible questions, or how storytelling hour was her favorite time of day. It was during one of those conversations that Rayhan learned the truth: Noor was a widow, too. Her husband, a journalist, had passed away 3 years earlier in an overseas assignment gone wrong. Since then, she had thrown herself into teaching, running the flower stall on weekends to help her younger brother through medical school. Her life was not luxurious. It was humble. But her spirit was rich, with gratitude, kindness, and an unshakable dignity. She never once asked about Rayhan's business, his fortune, or his public image. That's what made him return. The storytelling connection. One day, after a gentle suggestion from Alina, Rayhan asked Noor if she would allow his daughter to attend her weekend storytelling class at the community school. Noor agreed, delighted. From the very first session, Alina was entranced. Sitting cross-legged among other children, she listened as Noor spun tales of brave birds, clever foxes, and magical gardens. There were no fancy animations, no glowing screens, just Noor's voice, her expressions, her presence. And Alina bloomed. She began drawing again, giggling more, even telling Rayhan stories before bedtime that began with, "Once upon a time, Miss Noor said." Noor never acted like a mother. She never tried to replace anyone. She simply cared. She remembered Alina's favorite color, the way she liked her stories to end, the fact that she hated raisins but loved mint tea. Alina, in turn, saw something in Noor that she hadn't known how to describe, until one night. A whisper before sleep. It was late. The stars shimmered outside the villa windows, and Alina had just finished her bedtime story. Rayhan sat at the edge of her bed, brushing her hair gently. She yawned, eyes already half closed. "Baba," she whispered. "Yes, princess. Did you ask her yet?" Rayhan smiled. "Ask who, sweetheart?" "Miss Noor." Alina opened her eyes, fully awake now. "To be my mummy. And maybe, your wife." Rayhan froze. His heart thudded. He looked into his daughter's innocent eyes, so full of hope and certainty, and for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar rising within him, a desire for something beyond survival. A longing to feel whole again. He kissed her forehead. "No," he said gently. "Not yet." Alina smiled, then pulled the covers up to her chin. "You should, Daddy. She's the one." And with that, she drifted into sleep, her small chest rising and falling in a rhythm that had become Rayhan's anchor to the world. He sat there for a while longer, in silence. Because deep down, he knew. His daughter was right. Months had passed since that quiet Friday afternoon at the Golden Crescent Mall, when a 5-year-old girl pointed at a stranger and said, "Daddy, I want this mummy." What began as an innocent, heartwarming moment had blossomed into something real, something even the billionaire Sheikh Rayhan had never imagined possible. It was now early spring, and the local community school was hosting its annual fundraiser gala. The event was modest by high society standards but deeply meaningful. Parents, teachers, and community members gathered in the school auditorium, adorned with handmade banners, fairy lights, and paper flowers crafted by the children. Noor had organized most of it, just as she did every year. She moved through the hall with ease, checking sound systems, coordinating volunteers, and making sure each child had a costume ready for the talent showcase. Dressed in a soft pastel sari with delicate embroidery, she looked graceful and radiant, not because of luxury, but because of purpose. Alina was performing a poem that evening. Her father, Sheikh Rayhan, was there too, not as a sponsor, not as a figurehead, but simply as a proud parent seated in the third row, surrounded by laughter, hand-drawn signs, and the warmth of normalcy. As the event neared its end, the principal announced over the microphone, "We have one final surprise for the evening. One of our most generous supporters would like to say a few words." There was polite applause as Rayhan rose from his seat, dressed in an elegant suit without the usual formality, no security detail, no entourage. Just him. He stepped onto the small wooden stage, holding something behind his back. Noor, standing near the front row, tilted her head slightly, surprised. He hadn't told her he was speaking tonight. Rayhan took the mic. His voice, usually commanding in boardrooms, was soft now, gentle and sincere. Good evening, he began, scanning the crowd. Many of you know me as Alina's father. Some might know me from a few news articles or business circles. But tonight, I stand here simply as a man who lost something precious a long time ago, and thought he'd never find joy again. The room quieted. He turned to face Noor. But then, something unexpected happened. My daughter saw something before I did. She saw someone. A woman who smiled with her eyes. Who listened without judgment. Who told stories not just with her voice, but with her heart. He paused, and slowly revealed what he had been hiding behind him, a delicate platinum rose, handcrafted and shimmering under the auditorium lights. Its petals were inscribed with tiny patterns of jasmine vines, Noor's favorite flower. He took a deep breath. Noor, you gave my daughter her laughter back. And unknowingly, you gave me a reason to believe in life again. So tonight, in front of the people who see you for who you are every day, I want to ask. He stepped closer. Will you be the mummy Alina chose, and my partner for life? The auditorium fell into stunned silence. Gasps. Hands over mouths. A few audible, "Oh my God," whispers. Even the children were frozen in their seats, eyes wide. Noor's hand covered her lips. Her eyes shimmered with tears, not out of shock or spectacle, but from the truth of what she had just heard. This wasn't a staged gesture. This wasn't a billionaire playing at fairy tales. It was real. Earnest. From the heart. She nodded slowly. Then smiled through the tears and whispered, "Yes." Alina, seated beside her best friend in the second row, leapt up, clapping and shouting. She said yes. My mummy said yes. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some clapped. Some cried. One of the teachers filmed it on her phone and posted it with the caption, "When a billionaire listens to his daughter's heart." The video went viral in under 24 hours. Billionaire marries schoolteacher his daughter chose. Platinum rose proposal melts internet. Alina's wish comes true, and changes 3 lives. Headlines swept across news outlets, social media, and morning shows around the world. Comment sections overflowed with joy. Faith in humanity, restored. Not a fairy tale. A real one. Children see what adults often miss. But for Rayhan, Noor, and little Alina, it wasn't about headlines or attention. It was about healing the wounds that time hadn't managed to close. It was about hope, the kind that only comes from unexpected kindness. And most of all, it was about family, not built by blood alone, but by love, trust, and the courage to begin again. That night, as they left the school auditorium hand in hand, Alina looked up at her father and whispered, "You asked her." Rayhan smiled. "Yes, princess. I asked her." Alina grinned, nestling her head into Noor's shoulder. "Told you she was the one." And indeed, she was. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Alina's wish coming true? And if you love heartwarming stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest truths.